Do you know how and when to get paid on a criminal case? If not, tune in and find out.
You are listening to the Prosper Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. When I first started my law practice, when I left the DA's office, and this was in the mid-1990s, I really didn't know anything about anything. I'd clerked for a judge. I had worked for less than a year in the public defender's office, and they had an opening in the solicitor's office, which is the DA's office. So there's an opening in the DA's office, and that was really where I wanted to work. Even when I got out of law school and I was going to practice law, I wanted to get training, and I knew that if I was a prosecutor, I would get good training. I didn't really want to prosecute. I wanted to get the training. That's a different story, but I stayed there for five and a half years. And then I went and opened my so-called law firm, which was me in a professional suite where I had an office and a shared receptionist and no employees. And I think I bought a computer, I think a compact computer, which this is a big thing. It looked like one of those old-fashioned televisions or something like that. And plop that thing down on my desk. I really didn't know what to do with it. And so now I'm in business. I'm a lawyer. I'd tried a lot of cases, and I'd been in court and understood court procedure, but I didn't know anything really about anything. And there wasn't really a course to teach me that. And if you think about it, how great would it be if there were a course on charging and collecting fees in a criminal case? And I don't know of any course for that. Now, I teach some of that now based on what I learned over practicing law over 30 years. So, but no one taught that. There was no course in it. It was just an unknown. And so the only advice I got from any other lawyer prior to opening my practice was get your money up front. Get your money up front. That was virtually the only advice I got. So what would happen to me is that, and this went on forever. This went on for years. When somebody would call me, and a lot of even back then in the 90s, because I practiced in a tourist town with, something like 16 million visitors a year, a decent amount of my business was from tourists. And some of that was because, the county that I lived in, the county that I still live in, Horry County, Myrtle Beach is in Horry County. So there's North Myrtle Beach, there's Myrtle Beach, and they're separate towns. And then there's some unincorporated areas, Garden City, going down to Murrells Inlet, and these things. And there's a waterway. So technically Myrtle Beach is an island, but not really, because they just dug the waterway, 100 years ago for barge traffic. But then Conway, and the county is the largest, I think the largest land county east of the Mississippi. And so this county is the size of Rhode Island. And there was a great divide between Conway, where the courthouse is. Conway's the county seat. And that was a farming community, and people knew each other. And so even people in Myrtle Beach that lived in Myrtle Beach a long time, they had certain lawyers that if they needed a lawyer, there were people that was just known in the community that they were going to. Whereas for me, the tourists didn't know any of that. and I had some referral sources. And so a lot of my business, I think, came from tourists. And the thing with the tourists is that they come here and maybe they get in some deep trouble and they bond out and they're looking for a lawyer. But a lot of times I was talking to maybe the dad or the parents or the grandmother, and they were somewhere else. So I was forced lots of times to really try to make these sales over the phone. And sometimes people get arrested and they'd gone back home when they were coming to hire a lawyer, and that's still true today. So, sometimes I was amazed because I remember standing out in somebody's yard one time, and this was after I had a mobile phone, and the son was charged with something, and the dad agreed to pay me. I think the fee for that was $10,000, and I kind of marveled at it, like this man in another state who doesn't know me, after talking to me for 15 or 20 minutes, it agrees to send me $10,000. And I think at that time, I don't think I took credit cards or anything like that. They were not as prevalent. So he mails me a check for $10,000 and I take the case. But in terms of, setting and collecting fees, I thought, and I thought this for years, that there was some kind of urgency to it. There was some type of immediacy to it. I thought if I was sitting with somebody and we were having a consultation, and that's another story because I did that completely wrong because nobody taught me how to do it right. And probably at that time, probably even today, most people don't even know how to do it. So I was doing that wrong. But once the client or the kid and his parents or the kid and his grandmother or the actual client, if it's an adult, if they walked out of my office and didn't hire me, I thought it was over. For some reason, some irrational reason, I thought that I had to make the sale right then. I thought that was my one shot. Either they were going to write me a check and hire me, or they were gone. And to some extent, that was true because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was talking to them about the case, and I was talking to them about the case strategy, and I was telling them about other cases I had handled and the kind of results I had gotten, because I thought that was important, because I didn't understand anything about a sales conversation. And that's what it is. Intake for a law firm is a sales conversation. And even that makes, some people squirm, but that's what it is. So in that situation, I thought I had to get paid right then. So, but that's changed completely. And even when I started learning about follow-up and remarketing to somebody and reconnecting to somebody, and I learned about these, drip campaigns, because a drip campaign is, it happens to you all the time now, and we all know it, is you click on something, you talk to somebody about something, they get your email, or now they get your mobile number, and so they're always following up. And I thought when I first learned this, that would work if I were doing estate planning. It would even work if I was doing, divorce and family law, because it doesn't have the same kind of urgency. You almost, with the estate planning, have to create the urgency, because people can wait 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 or 8 or 10 years, and it doesn't matter when they get it done. It only matters if they died, and nobody thinks they're going to die. And so you could drip on somebody, for months or years before they finally decide, okay, I'm going to get this done. So I thought criminal cases were the same way. I thought, well, a drip campaign sounds brilliant to me, but it won't work, because I thought at some point, even when I learned more, that the time period for them hiring me was only a couple of days. But that's not even close to true, because if they're charged with a felony in South Carolina, they're quote, once they've been arrested, got out on bond, I think they got 15 days to request a preliminary hearing, but that's not a huge thing. But then they've got, I think, about 45 days before their first so-called appearance. So that's the window in which they can hire us. Now, once somebody decides that they want you as their lawyer and they're responsible, they want to get it handled. They don't want to put it off, and some people put it off. But even just normal people, to think about coming up with, tens of thousands of dollars or something like that, that's a process, and I never understood that. So there's an urgency, but the time period, it's just much longer than I ever realized. And I didn't know that. There was another thing too that one of my coaches used to always stress or really yell at us about, because he was trying to get our attention. And he talked about how if you're desperate for money and you're sitting across the desk from somebody, and that's another thing. I usually sat at my desk and they were on the other chair because I didn't really have a good conference space or a different kind of environment, to meet with them. But he would say, if you're sitting there and you're calm and your business is running correctly and you're not worried about money, and if you're the client and you're sitting there, he said, would you rather sit across and talk to a lawyer who's got 6 months worth of cash reserves in the bank versus somebody that's got 6 days of money before it runs out, or even less than that? 6 hours, I think, is the example used, because you got to make that sale. And if you've been practicing criminal defense for any length of time, I think you probably have been in that situation where you have to get paid. You need to get paid in order to move forward, or something bad is going to happen financially. And so in that example, when somebody said, well, the potential client, they don't know, what your financial situation is. And so you don't tell them that, and they're not aware of it. And he used the example. He said, when you have a terrible day and you come home and you're upset because things aren't going well and you're under tremendous stress, does your dog know it? And so everybody kind of laughed and thought, yeah, they do. So he says, so you think that the person sitting across the table from you doesn't have, the ability to see that as well as your dog? And you could argue that the dog is more sensitive. But he makes that point, and that point is that and that was the whole reason to create an organized system to run your law firm, so that you're not under the stress constantly. And I talk to a lot of lawyers now, and there are guys out there, and I applaud them, because their problem isn't money. They make a ton of money. Their problem is they have no free time. But there were a lot of other people, certainly the way I was, where I desperately needed money. Now, and I remember vividly this one incident where there was a client coming in, and there were 2 or 3 people. They were all like 60, 70-year-old men who had all gotten, busted in a sting for soliciting prostitution in Myrtle Beach. And so it was a small town, so their names and stuff were in the newspaper. And I was meeting with, I think, 2 of them, and my financial advisor had driven by my office, and at lunch he said that, because he was kind of a gossip, but he said, that Cadillac that was parked in front of your office, was that one of those guys in that prostitution sting? So, I didn't disclose that, but he pretty much knew. But prior to that guy coming in, and at that point, that was going to be a pretty big fee, at least for me at that time. And I met people in my office. At that point, I had remodeled this little house, and I had a desk over here, and I had some leather chairs. Then I had I think a leather sofa and a little sitting room with this little fireplace thing I'd put in there. And I had this AV cabinet with a TV in there in case we needed to watch a video or something. And so when the guy was driving up, because I could see out the window he was driving up, and I knew it was his appointment time, there was this big, like, black fly buzzing around my office. And I was determined. I said, I've got to kill that fly. And so my wife, who worked for me, came back to my office because I didn't have any bug spray, but I had something like furniture polish or something. The spray stuff that you use for dusting. It was something that you would not kill a fly with, and it was spraying out this white stuff. And I was running around the desk like Peter Sellers in a the Pink Panther, like the comedic actor Peter Sellers. I was running around the office, spraying that fly, tripping over things, leaving this like white foam on everything that I sprayed. And she's like, have you lost your mind? What are you doing? And I said, that damn fly is going to cost me $10,000, because I just envisioned that I'm in there talking to the guy and this fly is going around distracting us. Somehow, I think she killed the fly for me, cleaned the office up a little bit, got the guy in there. But that's just an illustration of how my mindset was in terms of the urgency. If I look back at that, I'd really think that, honestly, that happened to somebody else. I would never be that stressed or that irrational to do that. And hopefully you've never experienced anything like that, and hopefully you have it together. But the other thing that I did, besides the time and urgency, is I did not have a fee schedule. So I would just have to kind of think about what I'm going to charge this person as they're telling me about their case or what they need. Now I have a set fee schedule. So before they walk in the door, we know what the fee is, and that's the fee. And that changes everything, because it takes out all that decision fatigue where you have to try to figure out, what should I charge for this? What should I charge for this? The other thing is, how do you quote fees? With my lawyers now, when I say call this person back or call that person back, if the potential client says, well, okay, I like you guys, your firm looks like it's in order, it looks like it's a good fit for me, how much is this going to cost? I tell them, say, I don't know how much it costs. That's not your job. Tell them you're going to transfer them back to the people whose job that is. And now, ahead of time, because we may have discussed it, the lawyers may know the fee, or they may know the fee range, because they have a fee schedule. They can pull it out if they have it and look at it, and they can answer a question if they're pressed. But I don't really want them talking about fees. They're the lawyers. They're the ones that are going to save you. They're the ones that concentrate on doing the court work. Those are the ones that are going to try your case. Those are the ones that are going to negotiate your deal with the prosecutor. They have nothing to do with what we charge. And who quotes the fees in your law firm? You or some other person whose job it is to quote and collect. How do you get paid? The way it worked for me is my secretary or my receptionist is sitting out there in another room, and I'm back there. And I'll go, well, it's going to be $5,000 or it's going to be $7,500 or something like that. And then they ask me and say, well, how do I pay you? I go, well, you can write me a check. If you have cash, or write me a check. Well, nobody, middle-class person or above is going to be walking in there with cash, okay? Maybe somebody that's charged with drug trafficking or something, they might have cash in the trunk. So even that is, they got to wonder, like, well, okay, so I was like, well, you can write me a check, or later you can put it on a credit card. And so I'm fumbling around with a check, and then they write me a check. They put it on my desk. I don't touch it because I don't want to look like I'm trying to grab it, which is all I wanted to do. And then we shake hands and they leave. So how do you collect the fees? Do you do that? Or when they say, okay, I want your help, I need to know how much it is and how do I pay? That's when now we say, okay, good. If you don't have, once I've answered all your questions, I'll get somebody to come in here and handle that. And then somebody else whose job it is comes in there and does that. And do you have a process for that? Or are you just this one-man band? And I like to talk about the example of doctors. Okay, when you go to the doctor, have you ever asked the doctor, maybe in a surgery or something, a big expense, maybe you ask the doctor, but he doesn't know the answer. He or she doesn't know the answer. He or she is the doctor. They're going to get somebody to come in there. After you see the doctor, or before you see the doctor, you don't pull out your checkbook or your credit card and pay them. No, they have a system. They're professionals. They're doctors. They're above it. Okay? As a criminal defense lawyer, I wasn't above it. Now, no one, in fairness to me, no one taught me how to do it. In fact, if anything, they taught me to just sit there and let them hand me the check. So when you're in the doctor's office, after the examination, after the appointment, you go down to that little desk or that reception area, that window, and they tell you how much it is by printing it out and showing it to you. And then you pull out your credit card, probably, or checkbook, and you pay for it and leave. That's a process. And do you have that kind of process in your criminal defense practice or law firm? Now, it's big. It's important. And I think you could see that, and it's probably something that you never thought about, and no one talked to you about it. The other thing that happens as I wrap up here is that now, we get paid over time. There's a window, and we have a process where they talk to us the first time, and depending on the complexity of the case, and then they consult one of our lawyers, either in person or on the phone. Then they go back to the other person who's talking to them about the fees and possible payment options, because we have some short-term payment plans that work very well now, which I never thought that would work, but it does. And then there's this process. So consequently, I don't have the urgency anymore, because now we have cash flow, we have systems. I don't have the urgency anymore to feel like that at that moment is do or die, and I got to get paid. Well, that's all for now. Hope this was helpful. Until next time, I'm Greg McCollum, Prosper at Law. Thank you for listening.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.